Goodbyes don't always mean endings. Sometimes they are pauses dressed up as closure. When someone truly detaches, there is a quiet finality to it. No checking, no hovering, no curiosity disguised as indifference. But when a person keeps circling your energy, watching from a distance, or staying mentally engaged, it means the loss was never fully processed. They left the room, but they didn't leave the attachment. People often confuse distance with detachment. Distance is physical or behavioral. Detachment is emotional and neurological. Detachment requires grieving not just missing you, but accepting that access is gone and cannot be restored on demand. If that grief hasn't happened, the bond is still alive beneath the surface. What keeps them tethered is unfinished emotional business. They didn't fully sit with what they lost because they assumed you'd remain psychologically available. Even when they say goodbye, part of them expects your energy to still be reachable, your warmth, your reassurance, your familiarity. That expectation delays real closure. True endings happen only after the nervous system adapts to absence. Until then, curiosity remains. They check not because they want you back, but because their system hasn't recalibrated to a reality without you. The brain keeps scanning for what once provided regulation, comfort, or validation. That's why their goodbye felt hollow. Words tried to end something the body hadn't accepted yet, and bodies don't respond to logic, they respond to patterns. When your presence was a pattern of safety, its disappearance creates friction. That friction keeps them mentally attached, even when pride or fear stops them from reaching out. Permanent leaving doesn't happen when someone walks away. It happens when they stop wondering. And as long as curiosity exists, the door isn't emotionally closed. It's just not being knocked on yet. When you stop explaining, chasing, or soothing, it doesn't feel dramatic, but to the nervous system, it's a shock. You removed the emotional padding they relied on without ever acknowledging it. Your silence didn't punish them. It exposed them. Before, whenever discomfort appeared, you softened it. You reassured, clarified, adjusted yourself so they wouldn't have to sit with uncertainty. That made emotional regulation external, something they accessed through you, instead of developing internally. When that access disappears, the system panics. Silence removes comfort, and without comfort, the mind has no choice but to turn inward. This is where reflection begins, not because they suddenly matured, but because distraction ended. There's no reassurance to lean on, no explanation to quiet the anxiety, just absence. That absence becomes loud. It creates a vacuum where questions rush in. Did I misjudge them? Did I assume too much? Did I take something for granted? These questions don't come from romance. They come from destabilization. The loss of emotional predictability forces awareness. The nervous system hates unresolved loss. It searches for familiarity to restore balance, and when silence persists, it teaches a lesson words never could. Access was not guaranteed. That realization hits deeper than confrontation because it bypasses ego and goes straight to survival wiring. This is where the comeback seed forms, not as intention, but as tension. The mind starts replaying moments it ignored. Effort it undervalued, presence it assumed would always be there. Silence forces memory to work overtime. You didn't convince them of your value. You removed the buffer that allowed them to overlook it. Reflection only happens when comfort is gone, and silence is the most honest way to create that space. They didn't get clarity, control, or reassurance before you stepped away. And that's what makes the absence powerful. The human mind is deeply uncomfortable with unfinished emotional narratives. It wants conclusions, explanations, and certainty. When those are missing, the loop stays open. Open loops linger because the brain keeps trying to resolve them. What did they really feel? What would have happened if I handled it differently? Are they truly gone or just silent? These questions replay not because of love, but because ambiguity irritates the psyche. Control plays a role here too. When someone believes they still have access, even emotional access, they stay calm. The moment that illusion breaks, anxiety appears. They didn't get the final reassurance that would have allowed them to walk away cleanly. And without it, pride has to work overtime to pretend everything is fine. But pride gets tired. It can suppress emotion temporarily, not permanently. Eventually, the unresolved tension demands attention. That's when curiosity turns into restlessness. Restlessness turns into revisiting the past. And revisiting the past reopens emotional pathways they thought were closed. This isn't weakness. It's human psychology. The mind seeks completion. And when it doesn't get it externally, it tries to recreate the situation internally by imagining conversations, outcomes, or reconnections. Your silence denied them narrative control. They don't know where they stand in your emotional world anymore. That uncertainty is far more destabilizing than rejection, because rejection is at least clear. Ambiguity leaves room for hope, regret, and self, questioning all at once. That's why open loops pull people back, not to fix things, but to quiet their own mind. The moment you regain emotional independence, something shifts not in them, but in the dynamic. You stop reacting, stop needing, stop proving, and without realizing it, you move out of the position they unconsciously placed you in. Value is always measured by access. When access was easy, your presence blended into the background. When access becomes limited, not through manipulation, but through self-respect, perception changes. Scarcity sharpens awareness. Your independence signals something powerful. You are no longer waiting. That removes leverage. They can't rely on your availability to regulate their emotions anymore, and that's when value recalibrates. The return isn't triggered by longing or romance. It's triggered by the realization that what was lost can't be reclaimed easily or on their terms. Your calm without them challenges the internal narrative they held about their importance in your life. They expected grief, chasing, or explanation. What they encountered instead was stability. And stability without them forces a difficult question. If they're okay without me, what did I actually mean? This is where the urge to return forms, not to reunite, but to reassess standing, to see if access still exists. To test whether the door is closed or just quiet. Emotional independence doesn't beg to be valued. It creates conditions where value becomes obvious. And once that shift happens, the dynamic is never the same, whether they return or not, because the real power wasn't silence. It was self-possession.